Still trying to get some answers. What's going on with the Boston Celtics? All I know is their head coach has been suspended for a season. Ime Udoka has been suspended for a season, and it's one of those that you say, what do we not know in this situation? And if it's a year, why do you even bring him back after a year? If something happened that you sit him down for a year, why are you going to bring him back after a year? Yes, Eden.
And if it's not so bad that you have to fire him, that you're willing to bring him back, then why is he even really suspended at all? Just then fine him or something and let him coach. I don't really understand that.
Let's bring in Chris Mannix. All right. Which question do you want to answer first?
There's a lot of them there, Dan. And understandably, there's a lot we still don't know. The decision to suspend him for 1 year, I think, is the most interesting one, as is the language the Celtics used in announcing this suspension. They made it clear in that 3-sentence press release that this was, as of now, not a situation where it's a guarantee that Ime Udoka is going to come back, which tells me in pretty blank terms that the intention is not to bring Ime Udoka back. Now, after that, you get into maybe some of the gray area there about, does a guy get fired? Does he get fired for cause? If he quits, what about the money? I think that's frankly an area that we're in with the Celtics and Ime Udoka, but it was an interesting decision, an interesting choice of language to use in announcing the suspension.
Robert Sarver was being suspended for a year and fined $10 million. If I include Udoka's salary, it's very similar to the punishment that an owner got.
Yeah, it is a very punitive punishment for Ime Udoka, which really makes you wonder exactly what was going on behind the scenes. The Celtics, look, they don't want to push out Ime Udoka. They didn't want to push him out. I mean, this is a championship team, that goes into the season as one of the odds-on favorites to win the title. And Ime Udoka is instrumental in all that, was instrumental in what they did last year, and was going to be counted on to do the same things this year. They're just, at this moment, Dan, there's too many variables that are unaccounted for. I believe from what I've been told, in coming to the decision on this suspension, one of the things the Celtics took into consideration was the fact that this woman was a subordinate to Ime Udoka. I was told one of the things that was taken into consideration was the fact that, according to people in the know, this was a married woman that he was involved with. There are still some things that are unclear, specifically how the relationship started, how it ended, and what exactly triggered the Celtics to investigate in the manner that they did and quickly come to this conclusion.
And this is a team punishment. The league has nothing to do with this?
The league has nothing to do with this. This is strictly something the Celtics are running.
Okay. If you get the feeling that he's not coming back after this, then what do the Celtics do at the head coaching position?
Well, they're going to make Joe Mazzulla the interim head coach. And look, Joe Mazzulla is a very well-respected young guy. He's 34 years old. His head coaching experience effectively amounts to 2 seasons in Division II, but he's been in the NBA for 3 years. He interviewed and was one of the finalists for the Utah Jazz head coaching job last summer, a job that ironically went to Udoka's top assistant, Will Hardy, a couple of months ago. So there is a sense that Joe Mazzulla is a coach in waiting, and perhaps that's what Brad Stevens is looking for in making this decision. He could have promoted more experienced guys. He could have said Damon Stoudemire, former player, then a head coach in college, has been an NBA around the NBA for much longer. Ben Sullivan, he was the coach of the Celtics Summer League team. He's a front of the bench guy as well. One of the things that people have talked to me about is perhaps Brad Stevens is not just looking for a stopgap for this year, but for a head coach for the foreseeable future. Because, frankly, Dan, if Brad Stevens was just looking for a stopgap, the choice should have been him.
Yeah.
Brad Stevens is only a year removed from concluding an 8-year run as Celtics coach, a successful run as Celtics coach. He's still considered one of the best basketball minds in the NBA. He knows the personnel. He knows what it takes to coach them. That was my initial thought, that Brad Stevens would kind of take one for the team and come back down and hold dual roles for at least one season. But in promoting Joe Mazzulla, at least on an interim basis, it signals to me that perhaps they're looking for not just a coach for this season, but a coach for years to come.
And I know you tweeted out that maybe Frank Vogel could join the coaching staff.
Yeah, Frank Vogel has a long-standing relationship with Brad Stevens that dates back to Brad's days in college. And when Frank was coaching the Indiana Pacers, during his time away from the game between jobs at Orlando and L.A., he visited the Celtics, spent some time around Brad Stevens. I know they've got a close relationship. If you look at that Celtics bench, the one thing it's lacking is an established former head coach. There isn't one there right now. Frank Vogel, unemployed at the moment, obviously not a candidate for any job at the moment. I would think he will be someone that gets some consideration to join that coaching staff.
I just looked at the odds, the current odds on DraftKings. The Celtics are still currently listed as the favorite to win the NBA title.
Well, they have the talent, but I am a believer, Dan, that the head coach matters. And look, Ime Udoka proved that last year, didn't he? I mean, this team was a disaster for 2 months. It took Ime Udoka 2 months to break players of bad individual habits and to implement a brand new switch-heavy defense that turned them into the best defensive team in the NBA. He also was one of the earliest and strongest advocates for Marcus Smart's ability to play point guard. So he played a key role in all this. And as smart as Joe Mazzulla is, and I've been around Boston a lot, I know him. I believe he's a very smart guy. It's an incredibly difficult ask or tough ask to place this 34-year-old days before the start of training camp right onto a team expected to win a championship. It's just, look, Brad Stevens and the Celtics front office, look, they've earned a bit of a benefit of the doubt. Look, I thought it was insane to promote Brad Stevens to Danny Ainge's job. That worked out. Ime Udoka, while I liked him a lot to be the head coach of the team a year ago, he was not some home run candidate. That was an obvious coach. That worked out. Maybe they see something in Joe Mazzulla that makes them believe he's ready for that job. But it is a tall task for a young coach to step into this situation and succeed.
Thank you, Chris. I know you got a busy morning. Thanks for joining us.
You got it, Dan.
That's Chris Mannix, Sports Illustrated, senior NBA writer.